Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Bonnie, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm the poetry event coordinator here at Brookline Booksmith. Today it is my absolute pleasure to host four incredible poets, Harél, Max Heinegg, Deborah Leipziger, and Anastasia Vassos, for our third Thursday's poetry reading series. Before I do introductions, I just have a few housekeeping notes for everybody. Firstly, copies of these poets' four books, which you can see here, are going to be available for sale at the back counter over there. There will be a signing at the end of the event, so be sure to pick up a copy and get it signed. I encourage you to support these poets' work in whatever way you can, whether that means buying a book, or, you're already supporting them with your presence here, following them online, just saying nice things to them during the signing, that works too. But just being here is huge, so thank you. Secondly, please keep your phones off or on silent, and thank you for being respectful of your fellow audience members and of our poets for the duration of the reading. Please know as well that this event is being live streamed right at this iPad. Hello to YouTube. Our audience shouldn't be visible to our live stream viewers, but if you don't want to be live on YouTube, just don't walk in front of it and you'll be okay. And finally, we will have a Q&A at the end of the event, so please hold your questions until the end, but definitely have them ready to go. As I mentioned before, this event is part of our monthly reading series called Third Thursday's Poetry, which takes place on, you guessed it, the third Thursday of every month. Our October and November lineups are already up on the website, so if you're interested in hearing more poetry, feel free to check those out. And now for introductions. Anastasia Vassos is the author of Nike Adjusting Her Sandal and Nostos, which came out this year and was named a finalist in 2 Sylvia's and Headlight Review's chapbook contests. Her poems have been nominated for the Pushcart Prize, Best of the Net, and Best New Poets, and you can find them in publications such as Rhino, Rust and Moth, and Comstock Review, among others. Born in Cleveland, she received her BA from Kalamazoo College and her MBA from the School of Management at Simmons College, and she now lives in Boston. She's an alumna of the Coleraine Manuscript Conference and Breadloaf Writers Conference. She's as well as a reader for the Lily Poetry Review. In addition to her literary work, she also happens to speak 3 languages and is a long-distance cyclist. Thank you, Anastasia, so much for being here. And of course, Deborah Leipziger is an author, poet, and advisor on sustainability. Born in Brazil, she's the author of several books on sustainability and human rights, including the Corporate Responsibility Codebook and co-author of Creating Social Value, a Guide for Leaders and Changemakers. In addition to her work as a sustainability advocate, she's also the co-founder of Soul Lit, an online poetry magazine, and the author of Flower Map, a chapbook published by Finishing Line Press. Her full-length collection of poems, Story and Bone, was published earlier this year by Lily Poetry Review, and we've had the pleasure of having her here for a Third Thursday's reading before, so welcome back. You can find her poems in such magazines as Salamander, Lily Poetry Review, and Revista Cardinal, among others. Her work appears in numerous anthologies, including Tree Lines, 21st Century American Poems, co-edited by Fred Marchant, Jessica Greenbaum, and Brookline Poet Laureate Jennifer Berber. And of course, Max Heinegg is a writer, musician, editor, brewer, and teacher, multi-hyphenate. His first book, Good Harbor, won the inaugural Paul Nemser Prize from Lily Poetry Press in 2022. And his new book of poems, Going There, was also published by Lily and came out last week, so congratulations, Max. His work has appeared in 32 poems, the Cortland Review, Thrush, Nimrod, and Matter, to name a few. And his work has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net, among other honors. He is founder and editor of Panther Cave Press, a press created to publish writers with a strong connection to Medford, Mass. And he's the co-founder and brewmaster of Medford Brewing Company. He's taught English in the Medford Public Schools since 1998, and as a guitarist and singer-songwriter, has been performing and recording in Boston for just about as long. In addition to his rock and folk-driven recordings, he also writes song adaptations of poems, so you poetry fans should check out his work on his website. And of course, Jared Harél is the author of the long-form poem, The Body Double, as well as the full-length collections, Go Because I Love You, published by Diety Editions in 2018, and most recently, Let Our Bodies Change the Subject, which came out just a few weeks ago and was selected by Kwame Dawes as the winner of the 2022 Raz Schumacher Prairie Schooner Poetry Book Prize. Yeah. Jared has been awarded the Stanley Kunitz Memorial Prize from American Poetry Review, as well as the William Matthews Poetry Prize from Asheville Poetry Review. You can find his work in publications such as 32 Poems, Electric Literature, Plowshares, and Poem a Day, among many others. He teaches at the Writers' Circle, plays drums for the New York City-based rock band Flying J and the Ghost Trobber. Am I saying the word Ghost Trobber correctly?
Ghost Robber, yeah.
Ghost Robber.
And company.
Oh, and company. And lives with his family in Westchester, New York. Thank you to the four of you for being here. I think we're in for a real treat tonight. Everyone, please welcome our poets.
We sat down, we didn't know that it was a full house. Thank you so much. You heard our bios. I'm basically a teacher, family guy, musician, stuff like that. So I'm going to do 5 or 6 poems that kind of highlight those things in my life. I'm going to start with one for my daughter, who's now 19. I wrote a series of them for Ava at this age, Ava at that age. And the one that ended up in this book is for Ava at 13. Which gives you a sense of how long it takes books to get out in the world. Ava at 13. She lets her sister be served first, doesn't hover as I take down the candles. I'll want to remember this patience in the photograph, not you and me worried out of the frame, probably marking the party we put on. Tonight, before the dark stifles any tears, I admit we have 5 years, depending on interest. You talk saving for what memories we can afford, but what did we ever want from our parents except knowing they were at our performances? You dread the possible distance, promise to follow her, readying shawl and yarn. I've got my guitar, George and Martha, to read them. Say the word, daughter. We'll sell the door's gold hinges, the garden's good dirt. I don't know which one of the 4 of us water I just stole, but.
It's Jared.
Oh. So I'm going to try to move around a little bit and touch the bases, as it were, here of sort of the different themes. The book going there is literally a travel book writing about the places we go in a family, and also going there in the sense of, did you really talk about that? But it isn't so much confessional poetry, it's probably more the former of going to places. We had the privilege of being able to go to, my wife and I are both teachers, of being able to go to Iceland. I'm going to read you a poem that I wandered into a store. It's called Wayfinder in Reykjavik. It's basically a jewelry store. The mother of the goldsmith shows me the rune beside the protective eye of awe near the lava stone and silver necklaces adorned by the carved teeth of whales. She says, "Here is the Wayfinder," and puts it on so I may imagine how it will look on you. Along the walls she has modeled her son's creations. In black and white, a grandmother, still beautiful. I hope this is where we may follow, the way an older culture set the symbol to stay in one place, offering something of the earth that skill has shaped, clasped with a magnet to hold the rope, so you will know where you are going, even when you don't. The next one is set as we kind of drove from, I think we're driving either from Mass or from New York to Canada, and if you've ever driven to Montreal, you know that it's an impossibly boring drive. And things that are boring sometimes put you in those meditative states. And for me, as poets, they say we think a lot about commas and death. Well, I'm often the latter, although also editing, sadly, the former as well. Afterlife. At the border, our presence was questioned and deigned justified. We drove on to find the city of saints through a barren hour of fields, and then odd rows of tiny Christmas trees beside family farms, closely joined silos in winter sun and the tragicomic temperature. Despite birds gathered to share the cold or taunt the hardy conception of ourselves, the American myth workers endure for heaven's reward. The Greeks told normal souls they were destined to become leaves, flitting in the gray meadows of asphodel, unsettled by wind. Weakling shades not dark enough to warrant Fury's whips or any depth of Tartarus, and not the warlike bright who died without dying to sleep in the Elysian fields beneath their own constellations. Just leaves who take the name of shades, and worse, no memory. The streams of Lethe steal everything. There's no keeping the look you're giving, the one that took my life to see. And you may have guessed that the you in all these poems is my wife. So hopefully that's all right. I'm going to do maybe two more. I want to do one about, we like the West, and we like to travel to Arizona, and we enjoyed going to Zion. And I think a lot of us work, I don't know, waiting for the vacations, and it's like the struggle is to remember that your day is your life, and your life is what you're doing, not when you're waiting for the vacation. But yet the vacations are pretty awesome. This is called Post-Crisis, We Promise. After the children balked autonomous, we knew they were making permanent memories. So we corked it, admitted 10 years had got behind us. Age had made us less courageous, all too busy staving winter cave mines with our 6-second hugs, buying darn tufts to be warm in our docks, dodging their daily radar, whipping off tablecloths to shock ourselves with what we could pull off. By night, though, there was nothing to regret. Love was the remarkable escape we had made, a tale that improved every time with the telling. How a lamplit past was once a black ice road we barreled through with no GPS, because Mom always had a map. One day, we'll go west, our money right, laughing after labor's fiasco, tilting our ladder toward torrential light, headed into the canyons with full canteens for Arizona to burn the sourness out of us. You can tell that I'm like obsessed with euphony and assonance, and I can't stop. I'm always like trying to do that. I'm always trying to make sounds. It's like, stop it, just write the poem. Anyway, so it's really like, it's a thrill to be here. I'm so happy to be with my fellow poets. Really, like, we write because we love to write. We love to write to share the work, but we also write because we want to share our work with the people whose work we admire. That's you guys, and it's also some of the folks I recognize in the audience. So this will be my last one. It's a little bit long. We went to Puerto Rico, and we had this awesome opportunity to go out into a bioluminescent bay. And if you've ever done that, you know it's pretty amazing. And when I was out there, I was struck by how Puerto Rico is also America, and how what we pay attention to in terms of like who's suffering counts and this whole business. So it just struck me on a bunch of levels, and I was thinking, can I write this poem? Should I write this poem? And I did, and we experienced it with our family. We experienced it with our friends who were there. So I feel like maybe you're situated now. It's in a bay. It's in Puerto Rico. It's called Bioluminescence. And some of the voices in the poem are the guides. So they're calling out stuff to try to scare us. So if you've ever heard of the chupacabra, it's just like, the scary monster. And so we're running with our kids, and they're trying to scare the pants off of us. So you'll hear a couple other people speaking in the poem. Thanks for having me. Bioluminescence. By night through dark mangroves, we match our strokes to the mild haunt of coquilles and coconuts falling, following our kids' canoes and our old friends' laughter at the guide's mischievous invocation of chupacabra, the vampirical goat sucker, keeping the darkness light. We pause in the center of Laguna Grande and drape the tarp over our tide vessels, watching our wrists get gem-lit. Protists spinning around strangeness, bothered into beauty by hands become iridescent gloves. We hear they live 5 days, brightening, but once a day, their last hours budding. The glint of cold light at agitation, gorgeous. But there are ghosts in the glimmer near the lighthouse I read of in Espada's Alabanza, honoring the restaurant workers in the tower. Both blazed, remember? Yet after Maria killed the same number, we slept nights away, calm in the same country. Technology made the lighthouse of Fajardo a legend the boatman is fine without. But we need to know what to do with this brief light and how to respect its source. On the return, our children before us, our friend Danielle marvels they were only yesterday speechless. I can tell he's crestfallen at the way their need for him has changed. I scan the glitter, broken on the dark surface, and tell myself brevity is what shapes beauty, consoled by a childhood lyric that somehow I glow with the astral, but looking up we find Orion risen in the hierarchy of light at a distance only a story can reach. Thanks.
So nice to be here. Thank you all for coming out. I'm going to be reading from Story and Bone, my new book of poems, and I'm going to start with a poem about apple picking, which is something we love to do. My family and I, we love to do apple picking, and this is called Apple Orchard. And I thought it's very suitable for the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, where we have apples and honey. Apple Orchard. We ladder up into the crown, beholden to rain and light for apples, their purple dust, splattering of stars. This longing to cradle my twin daughters as when they scampered limbs and branches. Heart to heart, the courtlands grow as doubles. The sign says, use both hands to pick both apples at the same time. The apples in my open palms, this tugging of heart, this twisting of heart. And this next poem, you need to know the word in Hebrew, kavanah, which means intention. And I love to write poems about food. I'm Italian, Jewish, and Brazilian, so it's kind of in my blood. And I write a lot of recipe poems, and this is one of them, and it's called How to Make Challah. Begin with the biggest bowl you have, large enough to contain your whole week. You'll need to wrestle with angels. Begin in the place of knowing, the place that venerates, kavanah. In the smallest nesting bowl, proof the yeast in lukewarm water. Remember that you are proof. Let the yeast envelop you, rain, wet earth, fecund. Trust. Measure 7 or 8 cups of flour. Challah is not precise. Notice the flour cloud. Make a well, a deep well, to contain the grief. Pour the yeast water into the well. Let it seep. Add 3 eggs and 3 tablespoons of oil. Take off your rings. Plunge, pound, rage. Pour yourself into the challah, filament and fractal, fingertip and file. Give it a few hours to grow. Let the growth surprise you. Add raisins, golden and black. Set a tiny marble of dough apart to recall loss. Braid as if this is your last act. After the braids have doubled in size, entrust them to the oven under a coat of egg wash. Let the aroma permeate your village with rest and kindness. Bring forth the challah with both hands. And I'm gonna change it up a little bit and read some love poems. There are a lot of love poems in here. And this poem is called You as a Forest, and I just want to acknowledge that it was written at the Museum of Fine Arts at a workshop with Kristen Hill, who's an awesome poet who's here. And if you ever get a chance to take a workshop with Kristen Hill, it's awesome. I wrote 2 poems that night. This is one of them. And it was a terrific exhibit by the Chilean artist Cecilia Vicuña, who is just incredible. And we had an installation that we were seeing at night, and so it was very exciting to see. And Kristen's prompt was to write about someone as if they were a forest. And so this is for my partner, Andy Hoffman. You as a forest. I listen to the shelter of you, the sweeping canopy cradling the day and night of me. The moon rising in your branches, the stars falling into the sweep of your hair. I see the feet of your forest, the fingers, the limbs, the concave and convex of you, the light that falls around us. I smell your maple, fern, ivy, the light, serpentine, falling through the rings of redwoods. And the next poem is called 2S. Draw me a map of your body, your tender places of longing. Guide me through your Atacama desert. Take me through the disbelief, the fingerprints that cause you pain. Guide me through the caves into the canyons. Let us enter the caldera and traverse this newly created earth. And I'm going to switch it up a little bit and share some eco-poems. Because I was born in Brazil, I write a lot about the rainforest and about the environment. And I am going to be reading at the Boston Book Festival on Sunday, the 14th of October, and we have a whole panel of eco-poets. So I hope you'll join us for that. It's going to be really exciting. So this poem is called Lobo, which means wolf in Portuguese, and it's dedicated to Paulo Paulinho Guajajara, who was an indigenous leader, nicknamed Lobo, who was a guardian of the Amazon, and he was killed by illegal loggers. Lobo. I guard the forest, its canopy of reflected stars, the morpho butterflies, the blue moons, bromeliads, the fish, the roots of trees drinking in the river. I guard the forest, the children of the tribe. I guard the canopy with its toucans, parakeets, emerald. I guard the forest floor with its snakes. I guard the mating jaguars. I knew they would kill me. I could not have imagined that it would be a shot to the face, that my body would be left in the forest. Now you guard the forest, its canopy of reflected stars, the morpho butterflies, the blue moons, bromeliads, the fish, the roots of trees drinking in the river. You guard the forest, the children of the tribe. You guard the canopy with its toucans, parakeets, emerald. You guard the forest floor with its snakes. You guard the mating jaguars. And I'm going to read some newer poems. This is a poem, and the prompt was to write about shade and shade equity, and how some areas have more trees than others, and that this is both an environmental and a social issue. Tell me, what are you most afraid of? Tell me, and I will give you shade. Yes, I know of the many ways to die. Heat, thirst, flood, lightning. Why fear growing old? I have witnessed your life. There are so many ways to live. Remember, you grow rich in many currencies. Light, generosity, energy, kindness. Protect me, and I will provide cover. Connected as we are by need and nearness. I will cover the frozen ground with my leaves and weave my branches of color over your darkness. Come, rest with me. And this is another environmental poem. I spend a lot of time working on the language of sustainability because I feel like we're learning a new vocabulary to understand what we need to do to change things. And one of the terms that really haunts me is the term endling, which is the word for something that's the last of its species or kind. And this is called God of Beginnings, God of Endlings. Somewhere in the forest by the Ayampe River, perhaps today, the last two Esmeralda wood stars court and create offspring. God of nests, protect them. Purple body, ruby throat, emerald feathers, I hear your wing beats. In Brazil, you are beija-flor, kissing flowers to suck nectar for hovering. A glittering, a bouquet, a shimmer, a tune, a charm of hummingbirds. God of hummingbirds, watch over them. When the last hummingbird is gone, what will become of the God of hummingbirds? And I'm gonna close with a poem that's a cento. I don't know if people know what a cento is. A cento is a poem that's based on lines from somewhere else. So this cento is based on lines from the novel by Caitlin Greenidge, Liberty. And it's a gorgeous book, I really recommend. And I just fell in love with it and made this poem from words in the novel. A daughter is a poem. I hope that I have made you brave, you in the world responding to me, the song I made. A daughter is a poem. You in the world responding to me, a daughter is a psalm. Kind, but not too kind, the song I made. A daughter is a psalm. What freeborn thing can bear to be loved as much as that? Write something for me. What freeborn thing, you in the world, a daughter is a poem. There is bravery in being a mother, you in the world responding to me. Being a mother means being someone's God, if only briefly. Kind, but not too kind. A daughter is a poem. Being a mother means being someone's God, if only briefly. And you cannot understand what I have given you, all I have given you, to prepare you to fight. And you cannot understand what I gave you, you in the world responding to me. I hope that I have made you brave. A daughter is a poem. Thank you. And congratulations to the other poets. It's so exciting to be part of the launches. Oh.
That was wonderful. Hey everybody, I'm gonna grab a water. This is such a beautiful bookstore, a beautiful reading. Thank you all for being here and letting a New Yorker crash the party. So I'm gonna read some poems from my collection that came out just this month, Let Our Bodies Change the Subject. It's a book that's kind of knee-deep in parenthood, in that sort of kind of navigates themes of love and loss, of kind of feeling fortunate and lucky in life, but also feeling like it's all going to hell, and how to sort of navigate those two feelings at the same time, and how to bring children into a world like that. So, all right, so I'll get going. This first poem, so I have two kids. I have a daughter who's 10, a son who's 8. They show up a lot in these poems, much to their delight. They're both in this one. This poem also has a little bit of singing in it, for which I apologize in advance. It's called All I've Ever Wanted. The almond milk has turned. Flecks of foul snow slink in slow liquid. Not the discovery I had angled for this morning, but as my dad likes to sing like some Jewish Mick Jagger, you can't always get what you want. Which is just what I croon to my two children, driving them up the wall, because of course all they want is to get what they want. A 5th scoop of gelato to play Minecraft till their eyeballs pixelate in their skulls. What humbling work to haul kids toward thoughtful, the kind in humankind like a foreign language on a stubborn tongue. Yet even as a toddler, my son would refuse a lollipop if his sister didn't get one. Still plucks an extra sticker to gift her after school. And hell, my daughter can't ride an elevator without making a new friend or some lady's day by praising her earrings, her sweater, her purse. My point about discovery has escaped me by now, though I know the old chorus for thwarted desire. My cereal will be dry, coffee taken black. I will try against hope to be better than myself, which is all I've ever wanted, and everything I need. So the whole book was written in Queens, and there's a lot of Queens in the book. This one takes place kind of all around New York City, and it takes place over the course of a summer in which my daughter, in her own way, questioned by poignant, accurate question, came to understand death in her own way. It's called Sad Roller Coaster. My daughter is in the kitchen working out death. She wants to get it, how it tastes and feels. Her teacher talks like it's some glittery gold sticker. Her classmates hear rumors, launch it as a curse when toys aren't shared. Between bites of cantaloupe, she considers what she knows. Her friend's grandpa lives only in her iPad. Dr. Seuss passed, but keeps speaking in rhyme. We go to Queen's Zoo and spot the beakish skull of a white-tailed deer tucked between rocks in the puma's enclosure. It's just for show, I explain, explaining nothing. That night and the one after, my daughter dreams of bones, how they lift out of her skin and try on her dresses. So silly, she laughs when I ask if she's okay. Then, toward the back end of summer, we head to Coney Island to catch a Cyclones game. We buy popcorn and fries, a pop fly arcs over checkerboard grass. When past the warning track, the park wall, she sees a giant wooden spine. This brownish red maze, traced in decay. She calls it Sad Roller Coaster, then begs to be taken home. So one thing about having kids for me was that it kind of gave me a new perspective on my childhood and on my own parents. So my parents and my own childhood kind of shows up in the book now and then. This one features my dad. So my dad is a mechanic. He's not a particularly religious person, but every day in the morning he does kind of these morning prayers, which are called tefillin. I don't know if anybody knows what they are. There's kind of these black boxes and black straps. And I moved out of the house a while ago, and I'd kind of forgotten he did it. And then I came home one day and saw him doing it again, and was kind of taken aback by it. I just didn't know what I was looking at. So, tefillin. You think you know your life until you forget your own father prays every morning, unzips a velvet pouch to wrap worn leather strips about his left arm and hand 7 times around, like dressing a wound. You forget he prays in greased blue coveralls before the workday rush of mufflers and brake pads, and that he prays on Sundays in sweatpants and socks. He sets a black box a centimeter above his hairline, slaps a yarmulke upon his skull, prays, then stops. You think you know your life, but forget your father has done this since you were 6, since a thin, kindly rabbi spent a week in your home. How could you forget? It's true, your life no longer confides in you. For too long you've been wary, screening its calls like a bookie you have lost all resources to repay. You forget your father prays the way he does paperwork, all alone and without enough light. He never makes a show of it, never once offered to teach you how. You think you know your life, until the power sparks out one snowy December morning, so you climb your parents' stairs with your 2 children and laundry in tow, and there's a stranger by the curtains, his eyes squeezed shut, toes arrowed toward Jerusalem, bound in black lines. So I'm gonna read a poem that doesn't feature my kids or family, just to prove I can. So this one's actually on this cool little broadside. I have some of them. If anybody buys a book, I'll give you one of these for free. So over COVID, my in-laws were selling their house, and I saw their encyclopedia in the recycling bin, and that made me sad. You know, the whole set. And this is Elegy for Recycled Encyclopedias. And it speaks directly to them. In the end, every detail in the world couldn't save you. Not a thorough summation of medieval plumbing systems, nor the range and migration patterns of a Eurasian bullfinch. Not Bach, cuckoo clocks, or even Piaget's theory of object permanence did the trick. Among the dim, dusty heft of entry after entry, each smoke-stained century, treaty, and canal, there was the hard data of your being redundant, a poor use of space. So after decades insisting you hold post between a lazy boy and an upright piano, we split the tight ranks of your regiment, your navy and maroon uniforms with gold foil trim. No, you weren't shocked. You knew all too well the way of phonographs and monocles, giant ground sloths and floppy disks. Grime grew from your uncracked spines, save nostalgia or the occasional Wi-Fi hitch. It's a miracle that we are, till the instant we aren't. You knew that too. A knowledge as mythic and dispensable as fact. I'll read two more. Yeah, I've got time for two more. So most of my poems go through a whole ton of revisions, and I have them in these Word docs, and it'll be like, poem X5, 13, 27, a lot of different versions. So this is one poem that there's only one version of. I wrote it very, very fast, which is really rare for me. So it was after I took part in kind of the weirdest conversation I'd ever been a part of. It was at the dinner table, and my kids were having this conversation. I didn't know what the hell they were talking about, but I didn't like it. I don't know if there's any gamers out here. You might be able to help me with it. This is my kid's favorite poem in the book. It's called Survival Mode. Our daughter is killing villagers again. I'm upset because we talked about this, the villager killing, last week over dinner, and how we're totally not okay with it. Now here she is killing villagers again. It was different this time, our daughter insists. I just needed somewhere to sleep. She spears a single green bean, lifts it to her lips. You can't get mad at me for needing somewhere to sleep. Our son nods along, either listening or bouncing his bangs into his eyes. My wife and I glance at each other. Truth be told, we need more information. What was she doing roaming a village with nowhere to sleep? Was killing really the last reasonable resort? Couldn't she have bartered or built her own bed? We're set to interrogate when our son suddenly stops bobbing his head to ask what a villager looks like dead. Oh, says our daughter, setting down her fork. You know how dead cows look? All red after they fall to the ground? Same with villagers. They just die, and that's it. And then they disappear. True story. I was like, who the hell have I raised? Yeah. So it was one of those weird times where I just typed it out and it was a poem before I even knew it was. So last poem, thank you so much for listening. One of the themes in the collection is this sort of twin impulse to both pay attention and also look away, and how kind of it's important to pay attention to the world even when, maybe even especially when, the world is a hard place to pay attention to. So this is my title poem. It's called Let Our Bodies Change the Subject, and it owes a lot to my wife. It starts with a conversation the two of us had after a mass shooting. I don't remember which one, that's how many we've had. In the kitchen with the kids finally asleep and news of another shooting in the space between us, you confess you think death might feel like giving birth, the body insistent, having its way. You say you'd never been so at the mercy of yourself as you were on that bed in that cloud-thin gown, and just the knowing it was coming, ruthless transformation. I have no good response to ruthless transformation, and so it hangs there above a bowl of tortilla chips and black bean salsa we've decided will be dinner. It lingers while a reporter frames chaos as developments, her shoulders rinsed in darkness and revolving red lights. I want to kiss you, build asylum inside you, let our bodies change the subject, the channel to cartoons. Before night pulls away down the flickering interstate, I want one ruined thing utterly redeemed, the death toll rescinded, a swastika removed, my uncle's melanoma caught early enough to cut, a beige Band-Aid halfway down his calf. It had looked, my aunt said, like little more than an ink spot. I didn't get nervous till it didn't wash out. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. You guys are a hard act to follow. I really need that. I'm so thrilled to be reading with Jared and Max and Deborah, and thank you to all of you for coming tonight. I'm going to be reading from my book titled Nostos. Nostos is a Greek word that's first encountered in the Odyssey and it means homecoming, and of course it refers to Odysseus and his desire to return home from the Trojan Wars. Viewing Actaeon and Artemis on a Greek vase after leaving him at the station. What did you think would happen? How did you think it would end when you took his hand, when you traced his palm, on the platform near the tracks when you saw him through smoky glass? It was the ruff of a sheepskin vest, the scent of cologne, the torn remnant of his voice, that made you want to stay. What lonesome question, what awful turning, around the bend, beyond the curve. This next poem has some lines in it. It's titled "The Poet Compares Her Father to Basho," and Basho is a Japanese poet. There are three lines of Basho's, so when I come to those lines, I'll raise my hand so you know that they're his and not mine. The poet compares her father to Basho. I sit here in the lamp's skirt of light. Tell me, Basho, how to make poems, what to make of adjective and noun, subject, verb. Each poem is the only poem, and each moment the only moment we step into and step into. My father used to say the best part of the journey was coming home. The journey itself is home. There, you see, you're not that much different from my father. He walked too, covered miles to a store near the Great Lakes, near the Baptist church. Each step is the first step. My head bends over this precarious page as I write this. Okay, this next poem has a couple of Greek words in it. Samiko is a Greek dance, and a kafenion is a coffee shop. To the sea. Greek men display their love for one another by placing their arms around each other's shoulders, lifting their knees. Their trousers expose their skinny ankles, flowing their brother river counterclockwise, dancing their tsamiko across worn boards in a taverna on the hem of Thessaloniki, tracing spheres with their feet. Bouzouki and clarinet blare what began millennia ago. The sea remembers them. Their arms are so old, faces gray with stubble of beard, sweat beaded in the furrows of their leathered skin, fingers nicotined and stained with the work of living, their mouths contorted in ancient concentration, their movements the maneuvers of snakes suspended in grass, waiting, then slithering the grease beneath their souls, slick with history, and who has swept the floor before them. So they dance, become young, suddenly arousing the clock hands backwards to another time when they were covered with moss, the salt of the sea, the smell of women in their nostrils. Tomorrow they will while away time in the kafenion, play backgammon, smoke cigarettes, complain about arthritis, forget the old days when their arms stroked the sea, stroked back, up, over, strong, and brought the Aegean to their chest. Kavala is a resort town in the north of Greece near Thessaloniki. And this poem's titled, In Kavala. Fresh peaches eaten on the beach, more juice than pulp, orange and yellow, my chin, the air, eggplant, tomato sandwiches, the Aegean. Mussels we peeled off the bold sunbathing rock, knifing them open, squeezing lemon while salt tightened our skin. My gold baptismal cross that I lost at the boulder's base, then found, then lost a second time. Dear God, I saw you today in the grocery store stacking pomegranates. I recognized your dreadlocks. I saw you holding my American Heritage Dictionary, page 48, searching all the words with Greek roots. There you were in the maple trees' phalanges, the blaring canopy grounded, wet leaves and the grass stunted by November's cheek. At 4 a.m., you appeared behind my eyelids in the shape of a boat. Was that on purpose? Struts and joints and ribs and stretchers almost shining. Thank you for my body. Thank you for listening to my babbling until an hour after dark. In the park, the Orthodox priest passes floating on his cloud of faith, his black cassock, his cylindrical hat, long and tall. I wiped dust off my shoe. I thought that was you in the soot on my finger after I passed it through the candle flame. Dear God, when you see me eating in church, it's because I hunger. So my husband is a landscape painter, and also he did the cover of my book. And he tells a story about his art professor when he was in college, and who told him, if you want to learn a subject, paint it 50 times. And I sort of feel like, as people who write poems, that we write our story over and over and over, at least 50 times, to sort of learn it. And it's a way of, I guess we're all looking to come home in some way, right? Like Odysseus. So this last poem is the title poem of the book, Nostos. Birds circle, rich entertainment, and in the middle of it, nature, not quite dead. The sun's blade makes one last stab across my back. I am leaving you, October of my grieving, your gray head, your orange skirt flouncing round your ankles. I drive east in low gear along the unmuscled arm of Ohio, heading toward November. And as the sun falls behind me, trees huddle to mask disaster. Darkness, unwelcome, takes over the sky. I thank the stars for making a colander of night. I look up and ahead through heaven's perforation. The landscape shrivels past. I am Orpheus in a dress, Eurydice blind. I drive under an overpass. Lights strain, headlights on the bridge gleam like the eye in the head of an oracle. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you to the four of you for sharing your work. Now I'd love to invite you up to our Q&A table on this side of the way here. And now is our audience's beautiful time to shine. If you guys have questions for our poets, feel free to raise your hand. And we can also swap the books, so you guys can just grab whichever seat is easy. And do we need more waters? I have a couple extra. All right, perfect. But yes, it's your beautiful moment. Do we have questions from our audience? Yeah, go ahead.
Me? Yes. Yeah, Anastasia.
Hi. Okay.
Yes, and it's the root of the word nostalgia.
I wonder if it also is the origin of
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so, but I think it would be great to write a poem about that. To make up your own etymology. I'll give you credit for it. Could you speak a little louder?
So Odysseus's desire to return home.
Right.
It strikes a chord with me as well. But I sort of I didn't know how to like grapple with him returning to Ithaca after the war, and he's returning as a changed man, as a broken man. So is he returning the same, or like a version that changed beyond?
Oh, yes.
Like the recognition of technology, beyond the recognition of the love of his son, who like really remembers him.
Well, I've only read the Odyssey once,
I've only read it.
but I'm not sure. It's not clear to me that Odysseus was a changed man when he came back. I think Penelope was changed. I think Telemachus was changed, but it wasn't clear to me that that he was changed. I think in terms of my journey searching for home, or our journey searching for home, when we arrive there, to some extent we are changed. Yeah, so that's. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was struck by the prominent role of kids
Yes.
in the poetry of the two men, and the absence in the poetry of the two women. Any thoughts on that?
I definitely had, I have a lot of poems about my daughters, and I read 2 of them, and grateful that one of them is here tonight.
Go for it. Oh, I mean, my kids, they're in the book a lot, but that's just because they're around a lot. I'll be writing, and my son will literally just jump on my lap. So for me, if I'm trying to say something truthful and honest in my own work, they just kind of show up. It's not me trying to put them in. It's more just not leaving them out.
Yeah, they're just a huge part of my life for the last 19 years. And I'm a family guy. So when I'm writing, I'm thinking about what I'm doing every day, and family's the center.
And I think there's so much wisdom, that comes from kids. I think there's so much truth, and humor. So it's hard not to write about them.
My daughter the other day, she came up to me and she's like, Dad, she's like, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm a poet. I think I'm a novelist. And I'm like, you're far better off. Don't worry, that's not a problem. But she's quite the budding novelist.
Well, there used to be a thing, didn't there, about, back in the last century, about how people who wrote about their children, or women who thought they were poets and were writing about their children, that it wasn't really poetry. So to my feeling, that certainly has changed over the years. And I love the work of Max and Jared, who write so movingly about about their family life and aren't embarrassed, you know, that it's unmanly to talk about the core of their lives, which is their children and their families.
Do we have any other questions from our audience? We have time for a few more. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just write poetry as a pastime, especially when I'm high. But what is just as a general advice from the panel, what are some things I can maybe take into consideration, or what advice can you give to young poets that are just maybe starting out?
My advice is to write.
Right. That's what I do. Anything that comes up to mind when I'm up there, I just write.
Keep track of all of it, put it in your Google Drive, read a ton, read everything that excites you, write about what excites you. And like Jared was saying, it's all about revision, so much fun is to be had in the compositional stage, so don't watch yourself while you're composing. Don't let the scrutinizing part of your mind interfere with your creative side. That comes later.
Yeah, I find it hard to sit down at a notepad or a laptop and say, okay, now I'm a writer, when the rest of the day I've been like, I don't know, like running errands or like on my phone or something. So I find the poet Carrie Fountain says that writing is the act of not giving away your attention, but keeping that attention with you where you are. And so what I find is that, what I love about that definition is how her definition of writing has nothing to do with writing words on a page or typing words on a screen. It's literally the act of paying attention, and how if you do that, if you keep this thing far enough away from yourself enough of the day and pay attention to the world, that the writing will kind of come from that. So, yeah.
And yeah, just to follow in that, I think it really helps to have a little book that you take with you, and I really believe that it's good to write by hand, and scientists know this is true, because it activates a different part of your brain. And I get very inspired walking. I think, you know, having some kind of movement is really helpful. I know there are poets who swim, but just having that time to that your body is active and moving can be really inspiring, because your brain relaxes a little bit, and you're noticing exactly as Jared was saying. But it's exciting. Thanks for your question.
We do have time. Yeah, go
So
ahead.
I'm new to poetry reading, but I'm curious, when did your love affair start with poetry?
It's a great question. I would say I think about it in terms of my love affair with words, and it was very young for me. Words and colors. I was very little, and my first memory is actually learning colors and words as colors, and just being so excited about words. And my father has a book about the Hebrew letters, and it was so exciting to me, you know, to see, you know, the letters dancing and moving and being arranged. So I think it really, even before there was poetry, there was words and letters, has always like thrilled me.
When I was little, I grew up in the Greek Orthodox Church, and when I was little, my mother would be ironing, and she would sit me down in front of the kitchen sink, and she would repeat the creed. I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, but in Greek. So I was learning it in Greek. And so she would say a phrase, and I would repeat it back, and then she'd say the next phrase, and I would repeat it back. And I think that was the beginning for me.
For me, it started with rap music. So I was like 10, I'm 50 now, and Run DMC came out, and I was basically like, what is this? And so I just basically acquired a bunch of tapes at a Walkman, and I just started memorizing songs and songs and songs of rap music. And then shortly thereafter, I was in Greece with my family, and I fell deeply in love with Greek mythology. And both Greek mythology and rap music are secretly or no longer secretly, the starting point. And to this day, I'm fairly obsessed with the rhythms and the cadences and the sounds that we can make with language, and I'm obsessed with the idea of stories that cross the generations.
I came to poetry pretty late. It was a senior in high school, and it coincided with the realization that I probably wasn't going to play professional basketball. I didn't make my high school team. And I had this wonderful English teacher, Elizabeth Schmidt, who was she started a creative writing unit, and it was to write poems, and we were supposed to write 3 or 4 poems, and I wrote like 13 or 14 bad poems and kept writing them. And I think it was a time of transformation. I was about to graduate high school, and I think time started feeling like it was moving fast, and I wanted to kind of keep track of it, and I was like, oh, poems are a really good way to sort of keep time a little bit. And I think that's what it started being for me. I started realizing time was slipping away, and so if I wrote them, I could sort of keep them as a souvenir. And one of the great things about having a book come out was I thanked my English teacher in the acknowledgements page, and I was like, oh, I should see if I could give her a copy, and now we're friends. So, yeah. Yeah. Thanks for your question.
Okay, we do have time for one more question if anyone has one. Yeah, go ahead.
Any advice for putting together a first book and trying to get published?
No, I mean, how much time you got? No, those are two different questions.
Yeah.
Getting it published and putting it together worry about putting it together and making it the absolute best book it can be first. And then when it is that, try to make it better. And then when it is that, try to make it better. My first book was actually, I sort of Frankensteined. I thought I had 2 books, and I put them together to make one book that actually worked. In terms of putting them together, I knew what I wanted my first poem to be, and what I did is I sort of printed it all out, found the biggest room I could find, and spread them on the kitchen floor. And then I paid attention to the last lines of poems and the first lines of poems, and then almost like a train car, I was like, how does the end of that poem speak to the beginning of this poem? And then there was a few I knew I wanted to keep apart, and a few I knew I wanted to keep together, but I sort of did that. And that gave me my first order, and then I tweaked from there. Getting it published, we'll talk later.
My one piece of advice would be when you publish in magazines, which is the starting point, is to try to find your tribe. Try to find people who are of your mindset or who write the way that you admire, and look at where they publish and see if those like-minded people like your work. And usually it grows from there and become a part of the community. And read as many collections as you can, from chapbooks to full collections, to get a sense of how, almost analogous to like a good record, how there's usually, maybe once upon a time there was like an A side and a B side, but how a good record has a beginning, middle, and an end, and how there are different, nuanced parts to it. So I think a lot of us draw inspiration from music, but there's something to be said there. But my idea was to try to get all the poems out first, and then group things thematically, and then you sort of try to put it together. Lots of ways to think about it analogously, like a good dinner, things that go together. I had way too many poems because I waited a long time to publish, and so I sort of categorized them. And so first step is the poems, second step is maybe the publishing, third step is sort of the collation, the thematic organization, and the fourth step is POBIZ.
I think in terms of, what Max and Jared have said about putting together a manuscript is true. I've done that on little cards, writing the first line and the last line of every poem, and then seeing how they sort of fit together thematically. In terms of publishing, and trying to get those individual poems published in different magazines that you like, you gotta keep going. You just have to send it out, because you get, I think with this book, it might have been 6 or 7 rejections until a publisher picked it up. So you just keep going, and it's like, okay, they didn't like it. It's not, publishing is not a meritocracy, it's like sort of the luck of the draw in a way. And sometimes it's who as you're writing and as you find your tribe, as Max said, and you find friends, you make connections, and somebody says, oh, my friend has a manuscript, you should read it, and somebody reads the manuscript and it goes from here to there, and then you found it published, but you just keep going. Your worth as a writer is not based upon getting your book published, it's upon doing the work.
And just to echo that, I think finding poets that you admire, and Boston is a great community for poets. I mean, we're so lucky, and I think one of my favorite things about being a poet is just having poet friends, you know? So really, yeah, no, it's amazing. And so support other poets and read their work, and, you know, tell them you admire their work, and reach out. Both Max and I have published with Lily Poetry Review, and that's a local press. Robbie Gamble, who's here too. So that's, you know, network and get to meet, you know, Lily poets and other poets. You know, I think there's so many resources here. Grub Street, Mass Poetry. I mean, we're so blessed with all of the resources. So yeah, and take classes, and I think knowing people, networking, and I think social media is also incredibly helpful. I mean, there are a lot of poets that I follow their work, I read them, and, you know, get inspired by what they're doing, and you can meet them in that way. And I think that helps when it comes time to, you know, get blurbs and have people publish you. So yeah, come see us afterwards.
Beautiful, some great advice to end on. Everyone, can we give another round of applause to four wonderful poets? Thank you, Jared, Deborah, and Max for being here. And thank you to our audience for coming here, for supporting their work, for supporting the store and this reading series. It's really impactful. We're really glad to have you.